All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for our Live Well webinar. It's 5 o'clock, and we're going to try and be respectful of everybody's time. We are super fortunate today to have with us Cami Flygar. She's probably well known to many of you. Cami oversees our caregiver fitness facilities. She is our fitness coordinator and has been with Select Health and Intermountain for about 10 years now. She has both an undergraduate degree in health promotion as well as a newly minted master's degree in kinesiology. Cami really sees holistic health, which certainly finding fulfillment represents, as both a personal and professional passion. And when she isn't kind of spreading the gospel of healthy lifestyle to Intermountain caregivers, she can certainly be found learning and exploring with her husband and two teenage daughters, doing all sorts of things like the picture on your screen right there, cycling and mountain biking in southern Utah, and pretty much doing anything outdoors. So, Cami, can you advance the slides for me, please? All right. As we're kicking off this evening's webinar, I want to do a special call out to the Women in Medicine and Science Caregiver Resource Group. I have had the privilege of chairing that group for the last couple of years with my colleague, Dr. Dixie Harris. And as we move into 2021, just a quick call out that if people are interested in joining the Women in Medicine and Science Caregiver Research Group, we included a link, and you can certainly find that on intermountain.net. And if you're interested in joining the Women in Medicine Caregiver Resource Group, you can email the weareinclusive@imail.org email address. So just a great shout out to this group who is joining the Live Well webinars. And so, Cami, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joy, and welcome everyone to our webinar today. The topic that we're going to dive into is finding fulfillment, the hunt for happiness. So first off, pose a question to you all. What is fulfillment? What does it mean to you? And maybe you can write it down in a word or two, or even post it in the chat box if you'd like. But think about what that word really means to you. Give you a second to think about that. So maybe some of you put down some of these words. And maybe you didn't, but maybe one of these resonates with you. Now, I'm guessing that you don't sit around thinking about if your life is satisfying. But most of us still have that ever-present yearning for meaning, even if we don't consciously acknowledge it. Having a life of meaning is like the rudder of a boat. Without it, we just drift around, changing direction at the slightest breeze. So, who comes to mind when you think about someone who lives a life of meaning? What is it about how they live their life that you think brings them fulfillment? So I recently listened to a Freakonomics podcast, and one of the hosts is Angela Duckworth. She has a PhD in positive psychology, and she wrote a fabulous book called Grit. And in the podcast, they were talking about the relationship between age and happiness. It's this smile curve you see. They start measuring about age 16 when life is great. Most 16-year-olds are kind of ignorant to the responsibility of life. And then as you see that happiness curve drops, and it kind of bottoms out between age 40 to 50. And that probably has something to do with family stress, work stress. We're working towards goals, and we tend to set high expectations, and we're often kind of sad when we don't achieve them. But then as we age, as we start to get older, we reckon with our expectations. Our perspective changes, and the curve starts to change trajectory. And it's not just because we're objectively doing better. It's because we subjectively change our targets. We make them more realistic and more accessible. And when you look at people as they get older, I mean, look how far that happiness curve shoots up. Older people tend to think, well, let's make the most of the time we have. Let's optimize our emotional experience. And they don't sweat the small stuff anymore. Older adults tend to perceive time left as growing more precious, which is that concept of scarcity. They also have experience from time lived. So they know how to regulate their emotions by controlling their environments and minimizing their exposure to things that upset them. So have you ever lost something, like your keys or a phone or maybe a small child? I lost my husband in Italy several times because he kept hanging out at the back of the pack of our family, and he'd disappear into these random leather goods stores. What do you do when you lose something? What about if you lose your joy or your fulfillment? What steps do you take to get it back? I did a quick Google search and typed in how to find something you've lost, and uphold the WikiHow website with specific steps on how to find lost items. So we are going to go on the hunt today for fulfillment. We're going to use those same steps that WikiHow showed us. So part 1 is retrace your steps. Where is the last place you had the item you lost? Maybe picture it, write it down. Get into the mindset you had the last time you had it. Remember what you were thinking and feeling. Bring back the little details. Retrace your steps. When and where did you last feel joyful, happy, fulfilled? So part of retracing your steps is coherence. Coherence is the thinking-oriented level of meaning. It's about making sense of things. Coherence is about looking for patterns to make life more predictable. Patterns in life are like retracing your steps. For example, as you look at the life you've lived so far, how do you make sense of the good things? Why have they occurred? This is where you can dive into your own character strengths, such as perspective, to help you look back and take in the wider view of your life so you don't get lost in the downpour of details and stressors. You can use judgment and critical thinking to analyze your beliefs about the world and the people in it, and your curiosity to question and explore your life meaning and your sense making. You can use the strength of spirituality to connect your life with what is most sacred and special to you. This means to make sense of your own strengths, because research shows that most people are not aware of their best qualities. We're going to pause right now, and I'm going to ask you what your top 4 strengths of character are. Can you name them? Is that difficult to do? And if you can name them, can you make sense of how those top 4 strengths help you and are important to you? This is the descriptive work of coherence. It involves describing what is best in you. And as you deepen your coherence for your character strengths, you're developing a sense of who you really are, and that is your core identity. Part 2 is doing a systematic search. Now remember, we're talking about losing keys versus losing your fulfillment or your meaning. When we lose something, we tend to freak out a little bit. So first thing we've got to do is calm down. Do some mindfulness, maybe some deep breathing, and check the areas where it normally should be. Where do you usually put your keys? Do a slow and careful search. And maybe you're missing something. This is where we widen our search range, little by little, until we hopefully find what we're looking for. Clean up the area. If the room's a mess, it's easy to lose it. When we look at decluttering, how does that apply to your health? Are there health behaviors you'd like to get in order so that you can feel more in control? And what would the pros or benefits be of that? If now isn't the right time, then when would be the right time to start focusing on your health? So part of doing this systematic search is evaluating your well-being. What do you need more of in your life? What do you need less of? This is your wellness vision, what the best version of you would look and feel like. Is there space in your life for healthy behaviors, or is there clutter and chaos? Do you need to take a time out? Take a break and evaluate what it is about your health that you could start today that would make a difference. And that involves getting rid of those external shoulds, the things that we all know we should do, and figure out what would help you the most right now. Maybe it's sleep or exercise or setting home and work boundaries. Maybe it's your nutrition, decreasing your stress, or just practicing gratitude. Maybe it's just time for an adventure. So we've got a little joke in my house where if my husband's getting kind of ornery, I'll say, you need to take off your grouchy pants and go put on your cycling shorts, because that is always what seems to fix it. So I know that that one small step will change how he feels and pretty much everybody else around him too. So research has shown that life satisfaction is positive associated with healthy lifestyle behaviors. So basically, the healthier you are, the greater likelihood you are to find life satisfaction. And it's the same with mortality. There's a decrease in mortality when you have good life satisfaction. You live longer when you're happy with your life. Now, the thing is you don't need every single component of your health in place. A lot of us think, okay, we've got to have everything in place or it's just not worth doing. But that's not true. You start somewhere. You start with something. And as you improve on one health behavior, you just add layers onto it. If you're maintaining what's going well, that's great. Making improvements is great too. So after creating space for our health, our next step, part 3, is getting help. When you have lost something, sometimes you need to get a little bit more help involved. You can ask your friends, your coworkers, your family, maybe somebody borrowed your keys, or maybe when it comes to fulfillment, they might have a helpful perspective. They might know your habits, your coping strategies, and your self-sabotage. Asking for help can be hard sometimes because our pride and our ego get in the way, and we really feel vulnerable when we ask for help. Who's someone you trust or someone you don't know that you admire? Could you reach out to them, ask for help? And if it's someone you don't know, you could read or watch an autobiography about them, learning life lessons that will give you some of those skills. But don't allow others to determine your self-worth. So our key concept here with getting help is significance. This is the feeling-oriented level of meaning. It's about feeling that you matter and that life matters. It means to not only sense and know the value of your life, but to feel that appreciation for others and the world in a deep way. So, for example, who and what makes your life worth living? What story have you created about yourself, and is it the same story you're actually living? We've got to get rid of the negative internal narrative that's going on inside our heads and give yourself the same amount of compassion you would a good friend. Our brains can be just this black hole of crazy if we let them. We can get just so involved in that internal narrative, that negative narrative. We've got to create a positive one. So the action step with significance is creating connection. The most mentally and emotionally vulnerable people are those who are socially isolated. They have a 10 times increased risk of depression. And that's a big thing right now with COVID and our physical distancing. Connection is about having a social network that helps a person cope with stress. So there is this study. I love this study. It's the Harvard Happiness Study, and Robert Waldinger is the current director of it. And this study's been going for 75 years. Try and find another study that's been going that long. And the study's about true happiness and satisfaction. So they have followed 724 people in two very diverse groups over these 75 years. And of course, maybe some people have lived that long, but they just keep adding people into the study. And it wasn't just questionnaires that they were having them fill out about happiness and life satisfaction. They talked with them. They went into their homes. They did brain scans. They looked at their health records. And there were three main lessons that they learned from the study. Number one is that loneliness kills. Isolation is toxic. Number two, it's the quality of the relationships that these people had that mattered, not the number of relationships. You know, they would find couples that maybe they would bicker, but as long as they knew they could count on each other, they were happy. And number three is the greatest predictor at age 50 for well-being at age 80 was their relationships, regardless of their cholesterol levels. That's huge, that emotional connection to longevity and well-being. We are really social beings, but just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you don't need strong connections. You have to find your fit for connection. This can be social groups, a few friends, a spouse, a close family member, even a pet. But the thing is relationships take effort, especially the most important ones. And it often takes a great deal of vulnerability, which is really hard and uncomfortable at times, to truly connect with someone. Something that you can start with for connection is gratitude and unconditional love, or focusing on what you can give, not what you can get, to create deep relationships. Brené Brown talks a lot about vulnerability and empathy. And so if that is something that you're interested in or you struggle with, you could start with her. Another component of connection and finding fulfillment is using nostalgia. So thinking about a positive memory of a connection with a family member or a friend. And when you tap into your nostalgic past, you can access your true self and boost your life meaning. So try this. Just think about the happiest events in your life. Maybe it was during a holiday or a graduation, maybe giving service to someone, maybe the birth of a child. And what are your memories centered around? Are they centered around things, or are they centered around emotions? Connect to that experience. All right, let's move on to part 4. Is preventing future loss. Now, when it comes to losing my husband in leather stores in Italy, the only thing he could do was just stay with the group. I can't really prevent it other than give him directions. But be conscious and aware as you go through your daily routine. Be present. You're more likely to lose things if you're not thinking about what you're doing throughout the day. And this has to do with fulfillment too. Simplify. Keep your home, your work areas, your self-care behaviors uncluttered, because it's easy to lose things in a mess. Ideas bounce around in our head a lot when it comes to creating a life of order, but it's not real until you write it down, until you voice it in some way and you get specific about it. Focus on what matters most. Say no when you need to. Purpose is part of preventing our future loss. I like to call purpose fulfillment resilience. This is the behavior-oriented level of meaning, and it's the real core of fulfillment. It's about having important life goals and working to achieve them. So, for example, what gives you a sense of mission in your life? We talked about naming your goals, writing them down, making them clear. Meaning making is a process by which you reevaluate your sense of meaning after a problem. A health problem, a job loss, a pandemic, a relationship breakup, so that you can align your new normal with your previous goals and meaning and beliefs. How might you look at a recent setback or a problem and see it as an opportunity to boost your meaning in life? How can you have a growth mindset? So just like in this picture, when you fall into a hole that's too deep to climb out of, your only option is to grow out of it. Viktor Frankl founded logotherapy, and he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, which is just a great book for anybody to read. And he highlighted 3 main routes to meaning that we can all tap into. He talked about using bravery to face something you've been avoiding, such as a task you need to get done or a work assignment, or starting a new health behavior. He talked about pausing for a few moments every day when you're in the midst of a beautiful environment or are witnessing an act of goodness. Take time to appreciate beauty, love, truth, and goodness. Another tip is use your kindness in a creative way today. Go out of your way to commit one thoughtful act for a friend or a neighbor. You can use the double vision strategy. So this is from a researcher named Paul Wong. You can aim high towards your future ideals, but also stay grounded in the present moment. I like to call this optimistic realism. To do this, ask yourself 2 questions. What's something meaningful I'd like to do in the future for my family or community? And what gives me a sense of meaning in my life today? And just keep both of those answers at the top of your mind. If you can view your life as a journey, one study found that people who wrote about and viewed their life as a journey experienced greater meaning in life than those people who simply wrote about their lives in a literal, straightforward way. Meaning can be found in every moment. It doesn't have to be viewed as something obscure requiring great depth. You can find meaning when you go on a walk in your neighborhood, when you say hello to someone. Fulfillment is an exercise of choice and available every single day. It is not a destination. It's an intentional journey, and it's meant to be enjoyed. Stop being Captain Serious and allow yourself to laugh and let go now and then. We can all use a good laugh every day. So a few fulfillment cautions. You knew there was something else going on here. You might, well, again, I'm becoming Captain Serious again. We got to keep this light. So you might create some ripples. So when you choose a fulfilling life, you may upset the status quo. Create ripples in the pond. The world we live in tries to squeeze us all into these little uncomfortable boxes in order to get short-term results. But this is the long haul. Fulfillment is the big agenda. Acceptance means being happy with what you have. We live in a world of haves and have-nots. And we often try to fill those gaps with something, with counterfeit fulfillment, like a new job, money, a boat, new clothes. Or even intangible things that you can't control, like trying to make your children happy and having a perfect marriage and getting a promotion. But how long does that glow of acquisition really last? It's not long term. It creates a constant hunger. Fulfillment is a continuous process of creation. We've got to eliminate the as soon as I, and fill the blank, thought process. So the next one here is feeling good is not a sign of fulfillment. Sad, right? But it's not. They may coexist. You can have feeling good and fulfillment at the same time, but it's not necessary. Sometimes with fulfillment, there's a sense of effortlessness, harmony, and congruence, but often we can experience it during discomfort, challenge, and struggle. I tell all my fitness clients to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that is where the growth happens. When we overcome challenges, there's so many great rewards in there. We can really find clarity and define what we truly value. What have you learned some of your deepest struggles? It is possible to have inner peace and outer struggle simultaneously. I think about my sister who recently went through a pretty horrible divorce and is now in nursing school. In her 40s, she's finally going to school. She didn't go to college, but she's doing something she has always wanted to do. She has always wanted to be a nurse, and it has just been so empowering. Until you clarify your values and truly live by them, there will be a constant internal tension, this dissonance that can show up as frustration or boredom or indifference or anger. And we've got to align our values with what we do and what we say, because often our fear of change is stronger than our desire for fulfillment. It's so much easier just to keep doing what we're doing than to take the leap and make a change. As Gandhi said, happiness is when you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So what does your map to fulfillment look like? What stops do you need to make consciously in order to find it every single day? So, quick review here. I'm going to share a little personal story here. So 18 years ago, when my oldest daughter was 9 months old, I was diagnosed with an acute severe illness and given a 20% chance of survival. And just like toilet paper in a pandemic, time became a scarcity. And each day was now a gift. And even though there was suffering, and there still is, I mean, we all have suffering, there's still so much beauty and so much to be grateful for. When I started to feel pessimistic or burdened with life, I retrace my steps back to that time, and I find my strength, and I remember what I lost, but also what I gained in return. I expand my search to assess if any of the pieces of my health are out of place, and something usually is. And then I work to fix it. I reach out to those who matter to me and see the good in them, and in turn, I'm validated that I matter and that my efforts matter. And I remember my why, which I wrote down about 5 years ago, and it's that each day is a gift, and it's a chance to learn, a chance to see good, a chance to do good, and a chance to explore. And I make the choice to align my time and resources to live at least a small piece of that why every day to support my fulfillment resilience. So whether or not you're looking for your keys or your fulfillment in life, try to remember these steps, that fulfillment is an exercise of choice and is available every day. So thanks you guys for joining today.
Oh my gosh, Cammie, thank you so much. Really important words to live by. I have one question, and please, if you have some questions, you can put them in the chat. But while we're waiting for that, I might need a prompt, or something that makes this whole idea of kind of being cognizant of what is filling me up. What is a prompt that you could recommend to all of us so that we kind of get into that mindset of thinking about what is filling us up?
Yeah, so I think one of the best prompts is practicing gratitude. And to do that, set aside a time every day, whether or not it's when you get up and brush your teeth or you're driving home from work, something that you do on a daily basis that you can connect to your gratitude, to your mindfulness, to thinking about satisfaction in life. And then you can assess, do I need more connection right now? Have I lost my sense of purpose? Do I need to practice more self-care? So if you can tie it to something you do every day, that's a great prompt.
I saw something just the other day that was every day, try and think about 3 good things, that happened during that day. And in this time, where there's a lot of stressful things that, sometimes that's ever present. But I love the idea of just remembering something as simple as, 3 good things. And so that's something I'm going to try.
Great. Yeah, that's a great one for sure. It's hard to be unhappy when we're feeling grateful.
Let's see, Kim, can you go to the next slide for me, please?
Sure.
All right, I just wanted to remind the folks who are still on the webinar tonight that our next webinar, our final webinar for 2020, is on Wednesday, December 16th, again from 5 to 5:30. It's entitled A Good Night's Rest, which we all need, and we'll be hearing from Dr. Lori Nealman for that webinar in December. And we'll be posting the 2021 Live Well webinars on the Healthy at Home website, within the next month. And just a reminder to everyone, they have been once a month through 2020. We're going to increase that to twice a month, given the great kind of participation in the webinars in 2020. So look for more really interesting topics in the year to come. I want to thank Cammie again for contributing this evening, and to all of you for participating. And I hope you all have a great night. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Have a great night, everyone.